Welcome to the UFC 323 Prop Drop, where I briefly go over the entire card once again, but from a props perspective, giving you guys my favorite props for the winners, but also giving you guys something to think about in terms of ways you can hedge if you find yourself too overexposed on one side. So without further ado, let's get right into it. First fight up, Santos going up against Naimov. Now, there are some questions on Santos, who is the pretty stellar favorite here, as he did miss weight this morning, but I don't think it's something that's going to cause him too much issue. I still expect him to stop the takedowns of Naimov, control the pace in the striking realm, and I think that eventually leads to him finding a knockout, which you can get at plus 370. On the flip side for Naimov, you're looking for him to probably win by decision, mixing in his big power strikes with his takedowns, and you can get him to win by decision at plus 490. I'm still thinking Santos gets that knockout. Next up, we got Abdul-Malik going up against Antonio Trocoli. Abdul-Malik has been known to have fights go a little bit longer than they should, but I feel like this is a matchup that if he comes in with that usual fiery self of him, he can go out there and finish Trocoli quickly. You can get Abdul-Malik round 1 KO at plus 105, and just in case Abdul-Malik is not as aggressive, maybe he gets that second round finish. Second round knockout comes in at plus 470. And I think the only way for Trocoli to really win this fight is if he's able to catch Abdul-Malik with a Hail Mary shot, and you can get Trocoli to win by knockout at plus 2,500. Next up, we got Baraniewski going up against Aslan. I'm expecting this fight to finish under 1.5 rounds, which you can get at minus 210. But I think it's going to be Baraniewski who mixes in his power punching with his takedowns to find that finishing position and get that round 1 finish, whether it's by submission or KO. You can just get him to win by round 1 at plus 135. On the flip side for Aslan, normally his best way to win a fight is to get that early knockout. You can get Aslan round 1 by knockout at plus 450. Next up, we got a lightweight scrap here between the returning Jalen Tarantula Turner going up against Edson Barboza. It's not been all that long since Turner had retired, which was, I believe, back in March, and I think we saw him get his fire back as he's helped other fighters train for upcoming bouts, hence why he's returning to the cage, and I think this is the perfect time for him to face a guy like Barboza and take advantage of the very horrible durability of the aging Brazilian. I think Turner wins inside the distance, which you can get at minus 190, but I think it's probably going to come by knockout, which you can get at plus 110. On the flip side for Barboza, if his durability holds up and he's able to outstrike Turner in the last 2 rounds here, maybe he's able to eke out a decision, which you can get at plus 650. Next up, we got Marvin Vettori going up against Bruno Ferreira. This is a very intriguing matchup because you got Ferreira, who has never seen the scorecards, whereas Vettori has seen the scorecards in 14 of his 16 UFC fights and has never been finished. Ferreira has only won by finish. But I think this will more so lean towards the Italian side, as I think that Vettori should be able to eat the biggest shots of Ferreira, nullify his BJJ black belt, and bully him to a decision victory, which he can get at plus 165. On the flip side for Ferreira, if he's able to win, maybe he gets bigger shots off. Maybe he can grind some spots out. You can get him to win by decision at plus 450. And if Ferreira is able to find a submission utilizing that aggressive BJJ game of his, you can cash him by submission at plus 900. Next up, we got Ziam going up against Nazim Sadykhov. I've really been low on Sadykhov, even though he's a good fighter, but it's really been his power that's bailed him out of some bad fights or some bad spots. But I think Ziam should be able to roll with his strikes, roll with his power, and then shut down most of the grappling game from Sadykhov, and that should lead to Ziam outpointing Sadykhov and winning this fight on the scorecards, which you can get at plus 125. On the flip side, I think if Sadykhov wins, he's going to have to rely on that finishing capability because that's probably the only way he wins this fight, and you can get him to win inside the distance at plus 240. Next up, we got Barber going up against Silva. All week, I was waiting to see what Barber looked like on the scales, and she looks phenomenal. And I expect that to help her have a very dominant performance here and lead to her 7th straight victory, which I think she can get by knockout, which you can get at plus 500. If she ends up dealing with a lot of the grappling from Silva and this ends up being more of a clinch fest, I still expect Barber to win this fight, but it probably ends up coming on the scorecards, which you can get at plus 110. On the flip side for Silva, I think the only way she wins this fight is by submission, which you can get at plus 480. I just don't see that coming to fruition though. Next up, we got a barn burner of a matchup here between Terrence McKinney and Chris Duncan. I'm expecting this fight to finish under 1.5 rounds, which is why I'm more than happy to suggest the minus 350 on that total, given the stats that McKinney normally brings to the table. All 11 of his UFC fights have finished under 1.5 rounds, with 2 of them still going into the second round and still finishing under 1.5 rounds. I believe it's 20 of his 24 fights that have finished in round 1. 23 of his 24 fights have finished under 1.5 rounds, and I expect that trend to keep up here. But I think it's going to be Duncan that ends up lacing onto that guillotine choke and forcing the tap from McKinney here, and you can get round 1 Duncan by submission at plus 500. If you even want to go Duncan round 1, you can get plus 160. And then on the flip side for McKinney, I think the best way for him to win this fight is by round 1 knockout with his usual chaotic style, and you can get that at plus 390. Next up, you want to talk about chaos? We got Manuel Torres taking on Grant Dawson. We know the path to victory for Torres. Round 1 knockout, that's plus 550. But I think we'll see Dawson avoid most of that danger and eventually wear Torres down and win this fight either in round 2 or round 3, either by submission or knockout. But we're going to go straight with round props here. You can get Dawson round 2 plus 470 and Dawson round 3 plus 800. Next up, we got Jan Blachowicz going up against Bogdan Guskov. I think we're going to see the issues in Guskov's grappling game once again here, just as Volkan Oezdemir showcased in Guskov's UFC debut. Look for Blachowicz to stay competitive in the striking realm, rely on his durability, eventually get Guskov to the ground, and I think he'll be very live for a submission, which you can get at plus 950. I believe he's a BJJ. No, I know he's a BJJ black belt, and he hasn't gotten a submission in 7 years, but it's all about styles. If he's unable to get the submission, but is still able to grind out these positions, you can get Blachowicz by decision at plus 240. On the flip side, we know the deal with Guskov. Crazy power. If he can crack that chin of Blachowicz, you can get Guskov by knockout at plus 200. All right. Next up, we got Peyton Talbott going up against Henry Cejudo. I'm expecting no matter who wins for this fight to hit the scorecards. I think it's going to be Talbott who ends up landing a little bit more damage, nullifying most of the grappling from Cejudo, and you can get Talbott by decision at plus 105. We're on the flip side for Cejudo. Maybe he's able to get that control time. Maybe he's able to land enough damage of his own, and he wins this fight by decision at plus 350. But I'm going to go Talbott. Very low confidence there. Our next up in the flyweight division, we got Tatsuro Taira going up against former champion Brandon Moreno. I like Taira here, as I think he can get the back of Moreno at least 2 out of the 3 rounds, control it similar to what he did against Brandon Royval in those rounds, but I don't think Moreno is as good of a scrambler as Royval is, and I think that will cause him to get stuck in these bad positions and allow Taira to win this fight by decision, which you can get at plus 155. If Taira is able to sink in a submission, which is possible, you can cash that ticket at plus 550. On the flip side for Moreno, I think his only way to win this fight is by decision, by stopping the takedowns of Taira, outstriking him on the feet, and winning this fight on the scorecards, which you can get at plus 165. All right, let's talk about the co-main event title fight here in the flyweight division as well, as we have Alexandre Pantoja looking for his 4th title defense going up against Joshua Van. I'm actually leaning with the underdog here, as I think Van can stay disciplined and, within himself when he finds himself in those bad grappling situations early. But as this fight starts to roll downhill and get into deeper water, I'm expecting Van's bodywork and striking advantage to start to take over. I think Van eventually gets that knockout, which you can get at plus 500. And then we can start leaning into those round and method of victory props as well. You can get round 3 knockout at plus 2,500, round 4 knockout plus 2,700, and round 5 knockout at plus 3,000. But I think the Burmese fighter will end up getting his hand raised and new. On the flip side for Pantoja, we know the path to victory. By submission plus 150, and I think if it happens, it probably comes early. Round 1 submission is plus 700, and round 2 submission is plus 900. Might be able to win by decision as well, but I think if this fight goes into deeper water, Van will be the one in control, staying away from the takedowns and clinch game of Pantoja and picking him apart on the feet. All right, that brings us to the main event now, which I think is pretty easy to break down, between Merab Dvalishvili looking to go 2-0 against Petr Yan, but more importantly, earn his 4th title defense of 2025. That's unheard of. Dvalishvili very good in terms of just staying active and continuing to rack up some wins. And I expect him to do the same thing here against Jan. Look for Dvalishvili to set his usual pace, a lot of pressure, a lot of activity, a lot of takedown attempts, and keep Jan muzzled. And I think we'll see a classic Dvalishvili decision, which you can get at -185. And then on the flip side for Jan, I expect him to be more aggressive, which could lead to a knockout, which is probably his only path to victory. And you could potentially cash that ticket at +1,000. All right. Let's talk about the 3 best prop bets in Longshot now. Quick recap of the last one. We go 1 and 2 on our 3 best prop bets, with Freeman round 2 knockout at +600 and Yakiev round 1 KO at +130. Not coming through for us, but Miktaibek Orobai makes short work of Jack Hermanson and cashes our inside the distance ticket at +175. Our long shot was Ryan Lauder round 2 knockout at +1500. That guy just can't eat a shot. He ends up getting knocked out by Nardiev in the first round. All right, let's get to our top 3 for UFC 323. We're going with a trio of decision props here. We got Marvin Vettori by decision +165. We got Ferris Ziam by decision +125. And then Tatsuro Taira by decision at +155. And then our long shot, we're going to go with former light heavyweight champion Jan Blachowicz. And I think he sinks in that submission, forces the tap from Bogdan Guskov, and cashes us a +950 ticket. There you guys go. That is a wrap on the UFC 323 content. We'll be back Monday to break down the last UFC card of the year, UFC Vegas 112. And then we also have PFL Europe having their last match event as well. Vadim Nemkov, I believe, taking on Renan Ferreira. Fun fight there. Chris Cyborg returning as well. So a lot to talk about next weekend. Good luck on all your action this weekend. I'll see you guys then. Peace.